Good morning, everybody. We're going to bring Mayor back in a few minutes. But we are lucky to have with us, and I knew she'd be here because a woman from Buffalo doesn't worry about the snow. It's my pleasure to introduce the governor of the state of New York, one of our vice presidents, Shimmy Pelman. He also is the president of Tom Pei Shabbos of Queens. Mr. Pelman, if you would, please join me here. Shimmy? The mic is yours. We'll be back. I'll be back shortly.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. As you know, Queens Jewish Community Council is a very worthy cause of taking care of many of the needs of people in Queens. And we're privileged to have the governor join us. This is a lousy weather day, and yet she took time out from her busy schedule, especially how crazy Sundays off was. But I want to tell you something about the governor. She's been a longtime friend of the Jewish community, battling anti-Semitism. In fact, after October 7th, she condemned Hamas, where many elected officials did not. And within several days, flew to Israel to show solidarity with the Israelis and Jewish people. In fact, she was one of the first elected officials to visit the sites of where all those people were killed, including Kibbutz Aza and many other sites. The governor is also someone who has been in the forefront against anti-Semitism, fighting against the unfortunate bail reforms from the prior administration. In fact, she was successful in changing some of the laws, especially on hate crimes and anti-Semitism. I also want you to know that she's in Albany and in New York State every day fighting on behalf of all of us. In fact, as a Democratic district leader, in a year and a half, I will be fighting and inviting all of you to join us in getting our governor reelected. My friend, my governor, Kathy Hochul.
Shalom. Wonderful to see all of you, and what snow. In Buffalo, we measure it by feet. And seriously, when I first became governor, we had 7 feet of snow in a weekend. I'm a little over 5 feet. Okay, this is what it's like where I come from. So I was happy to come down here for the pleasant weather. And given that I'm not really watching a Super Bowl this year, my team didn't make it, although we came close. And I thank all of you for temporarily adopting the Buffalo Bills. Many of you are Giants and Jets fans, and thank you. Appreciate that. But it's an honor to be here. And Shimmy and I are very, very close friends. And when he told me about this event, and I said, the work that you do here, when you read this, the immigrant services, the counseling, the kosher meals, the food stamps, preserving the presence of the Jewish presence in Queens, support for Israel, I said, this is a group after my own heart. This is what I do every single day. So we are aligned in our interests. For me as your governor, but also to take care of people in need. The people who sometimes fall between the cracks that society overlooks. And that's why I'm so passionate about my work. But also, as Shimmy mentioned, there have been challenging days for the Jewish community. After October 7th, I would have anticipated there to be an outpouring of support for the Jewish people here and abroad. That people understand the horrible pain inflicted when 1,200 people are murdered, hundreds kidnapped, including many New Yorkers and many Americans. There should have been a sense of humanity and support and love coming back to the Jewish community. But what we saw instead was so disgraceful, so abhorrent to me. In fact, it was the opposite. The rise in anti-Semitism, the hate crimes, the venom spewed at our college campus kids who simply wanted to go to school and get an education. It was so incredibly disappointing because we pride ourselves in New York, embracing our diversity, different cultures, different religions. My God, we're in Queens, the most diverse place on the planet. And it is that tolerance, and even tolerance sounds like you just tolerate people, right? It should be an embrace, an acceptance, an inclusive feeling. But I went over there immediately. My plane touched down as President Biden's plane was taking off. It's still hard to process what I saw, but I knew as the leader of the largest Jewish community outside of Israel that I had to go see it with my own eyes because there were already deniers of what had happened on that day. I need to be able to come back and say, no, you're wrong. This is a brutal, unprovoked assault on innocent people, especially those in a kibbutz, a place where people go to step out of society and have a different life, raise their children with good values. And when I went to Kfar Aza, the place of horrible, horrible slaughter, I learned of the story of a family as I walked through their destroyed home. It was a family that every year on this day would fly kites over to Gaza as a sign of friendship and peace and thoughts of a better tomorrow. And this family and many communities used to collect money to send over to the children who were hungry and needed help in Gaza. This is the kind of people I'm talking about. These were the ones who were slaughtered. And that day they had the kites ready to fly. They did it every time, once a year at 4 o'clock. Instead of flying over the border on that day, I saw them on the ground in pools of blood. And we stepped around that. And it was shocking for me to know what had happened in those rooms. The safe shelters that ended up being torture chambers. I know it's hard to think about this again, but if we forget about this, shame on us. Because we must remember this. This is a black mark on our world history. But I come back from that after going there, and it was a difficult time. I think you know the story of learning that my father passed when I was on the plane over. My father had been in the peak of health. And I spoke to him as I was leaving JFK, and my dad still thinks I'm his little girl. He calls me Dolly. And I said, Dad, I'm going over to Israel. And he said, I'm so proud of you, honey. I'm so proud. He had wanted to go there on his 80th birthday. He went there. He went to the wall. He was so excited. But he didn't know I'd be going under these circumstances. He says, I'm proud of you, Dolly, but keep your goddamn head down. Okay? That's my Irish Catholic father, a little tough and crusty. And I learned as I landed that during the night he had a hemorrhage and passed. My staff had me ready to go back immediately. And I said, I can't wait for my father now. I'm here to comfort a nation. I need to give some love and support, tell them we care about them deeply in the state of New York. But what I saw was so profound because word had leaked out in the community in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem about what had happened to my father. People were getting out of their cars and coming up to me and walking up to me to comfort me. Now you expect to lose an 87-year-old father at some point, but these are people who are learning of the shock and horror of losing teenagers and children and their loved ones, and they were trying to comfort me. I'll never lose that sense of love and compassion, and it must be returned. We must continue to stand up and fight anti-Semitism, and not just by putting tweets out. Okay? This means you change laws, and that's, as Shimmy mentioned, you change the bail laws and say, let's put back in hate crimes so people who commit these horrific crimes against our citizens are actually held in court until their day comes instead of being back on the street. And if you vandalize our college campuses or create an environment where a young student feels unsafe or call for the genocide of a people, which is exactly what from the river to the sea means, If you do that, you are engaging in anti-Semitism, and I told every single college president in the state of New York, if that's happening on your campus, you are allowing the violation of state and federal civil rights laws, and we will not put up with that. That's how tough you had to be. And yes, we respect the right to protest. Of course you can. But protests must be respectful. And respect both sides. We've had protests throughout history. My parents were these civil justice Catholics, social justice Catholics. We protested the Vietnam War. We stood up for civil rights. We stood up for women's rights. I was a kid and my mom took me to all these marches. And I became an activist and fought against a lot of societal issues. But you know what it never was? It was never American against American, or New Yorker against New Yorker, or a student against student. That is what it's evolved down to. And that's where we must stand up and say no. You can protest a government, you can protest a site, you can protest a policy, but you don't go after each other as human beings. And that's the culture I want to change. I want to bring back the New York that we all believe exists, what drew us here, why people so many came here, refugees settled, family members, Holocaust survivors. They came here because we were that place that welcomed them and made them feel part of a family. My friends, we can't lose that. That's why as your governor, I'll continue forever to stand up and say no more. And I'll use my voice loudly and continue to go everywhere across this state and say we're better than that. And this will not be tolerated. No hate in our state. And I'll continue investing money, $35 million to protect our synagogues and our yeshivas, and make sure that my state police, our hate crimes unit, which I quadrupled the number of people in, will respond to everything. And I'll make sure that there's police officers on the subways, especially on the trains late at night, when people are afraid and should not have that fear. This is New York. You should not have that fear of traveling, or if you're wearing indicia of your religious beliefs, that you're targeted and someone's going to hurt you. I want police officers to stand up against that as well. In fact, fellow citizens should stand up against that as well. We can do this. I do believe in the spirit of New York. This profoundly fascinating place, full of diversity, full of great people. But all of us must be on the vanguard to protect it. And that's exactly what you're doing here today. I thank all of you, our elected leaders who've joined us. I know you'll be hearing from many of them. They are my partners in government. But know this. I'm a fighter. I will stand up for you. I will continue to espouse our great values as New Yorkers and call out those who try to denigrate any member of our society, particularly the Jewish community. Thank you very much for your coming here today for the great support of this organization. Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan.